What is up, everyone? Happy day. Happy Wednesday, midweek as we gear up heading into this holiday season. Welcome to the Traded Black podcast. I'm your host, Shad Dales, here on the Benzinga Television Network. Some big stuff we got to talk about today, including what is going on with this latest news. We saw a drop in the market before the close here today involving news from President Xi in China pertaining to Taiwan. What does that mean as well? Canopy Growth, their 10-to-1 reverse stock split, began trading under the new price. First time today. What do we see as far as price action? Well, that's one of the main reasons why you should listen to the podcast today as we explain where it's at right now, where it could be going, and the overall interest level amongst institutions. So let's welcome in TDR millennial entrepreneur Anthony Varrell and TDR lead financial writer Benjamin A. Smith. Hope you guys are having a good week. Man, crazy times to say the least. Things get crazier and crazier. That was quite the close going in to the closing bell here this afternoon.
Yeah, it really was. It really was. I think it was a case of the market looking for anything could have set this off, because we've had like an epic melt up in the market, really. NASDAQ reaching new highs, and it was looking for an excuse to sell off, and that's what happened.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of surprising to see. But I mean, I don't think this Xi news is new. I mean, he's said that reunification of Taiwan is in his 100-year agenda. He's telegraphed it. I mean, how much more do we want him to say it?
So why do you think this? So why do you think this stood out today versus if he's out?
I have no idea. I mean, I think it's kind of people grasping at straws. I mean, like Ben said, the market's been ripping the last couple of sessions. I mean, it's literally been a melt up.
Yeah,
going into year's end. Yeah,
last couple of sessions been melting up since like the end of November. So we're talking like 3-4 weeks of melt up, and I think it's one of those cases where if it's not the Xi news, it could be any sort of news. The market was extremely oversold, and anything could have been the trigger to sell this off, and it did. And people sort of jumped on what was out there in the realm right now. I even though it's on the long-term roadmap for China to reunify Taiwan, they're definitely not going to announce it to Biden or anybody else when they're going to invade. So
yeah,
I really think that this is just a reason to sell off, I think.
Well, I think it's more so. I think it's more so a potential conflict in Yemen. I mean, those are major shipping lanes. Those are major implications on oil. And I mean, we've already mobilized our fleet to go into the Red Sea. So I mean, that's a big problem. That affects shipping. That affects energy. That affects oil. If oil spikes, it's going to put a torpedo in the progress that we've made towards inflation. By the way, John Verville, how's Solana doing today? After we called it out. Good to see you on the stream.
It ripped 8% yesterday. Was it up again today?
Cracked $80 today. I think it's about 83 right now.
Hi.
Wow, good call.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. All right, gents, this is Into the Wire here at the Traded Black podcast here on the Benzinga Television Network. I'm your host, Shad Dales, with Benjamin A. Smith and Anthony Varrell. Let's jump into cannabis and begin with encouraging news for the sector in the state of Florida, where a Republican senator introduced a bill to allow licensed medical marijuana businesses to take state tax reductions that they're banned from claiming at the federal level. So first off, Anthony, we're seeing more and more states do this. How much of an impact would this have on the sector if a state like Florida did implement this? This is big.
So I don't know if it would impact the sector. I mean, obviously the first two names that come to mind that it would impact their business the most would be Trulieve and Consortium, as they have the most leverage out of their portfolios to the state. Air Wellness would also be a major beneficiary of it, as their Florida operation is a huge profit center, as well as Curaleaf and Verano. If I left anybody out, I apologize. But it'd be nice. I mean, and the big thing here is it's a Republican senator that's bringing this up. It's not a Democratic senator. It's a Republican senator from the state of Florida. This would have huge implications on Trulieve's core business. This is probably why Kim wrote the check for $130 million to retire that debt. She's playing chess.
Why does it surprise you to say Republican? Because this industry is getting bipartisan.
I mean, everybody wants to knock the Republicans, saying that they're anti-cannabis, saying that Ron DeSantis is anti-cannabis. Like, the GOP gets a knock on being anti the industry that we obviously all, us and our viewers, love the most. And I mean, I really don't think it's that at its heart. Granted, there are bad actors and very ill-informed actors, just like the Reefer Madness segment that we covered on Monday.
Yeah.
But in Republicans and the members of the GOP, like, they are on the side of the industry to an extent. I mean, this is great to see. And like I said, this will affect the core businesses of the companies mentioned greatly.
Yeah, absolutely. Ben.
If it actually gets enacted into law and goes through.
Yeah.
So we have a ways to go, but the conversation is being had.
Okay,
Yep,
my
sure.
question, I don't know if you know this offhand, Anthony, but my question is, given that these are, this would disallow or reverse, state expenses that they can be deducted, not federal expenses, how much savings are actually going to be parsed if this went into law? Do you know offhand?
I
It won't be
don't
the
know.
full, it won't be the full
And
280E, right? If it was
no, I
a
mean,
federal thing.
we're going to have to be able to get an earnings print, extrapolate it, and see the ramifications of it on the earnings print from the structure of what 280 implies quarter over quarter. We'll be interested to dive into that once we hopefully are able to. But I would assume it's going to be sizable. I would assume it's going to be quite a decent amount of savings on the balance sheet. I'm just wondering, actually, now thinking about it, how it would affect a company that's operating in Florida versus a company that's based in Florida. There's a lot of there's actually a lot on this. We should probably get Brady on to talk about it in the coming weeks, to dive into it a little bit deeper on the implications to these actual businesses moving forward. But like we said, it's another step forward in strengthening the fundamental foundations of these businesses. And they're moving with or without movement at the DEA level or at the legislative level. We're getting incremental progress.
Makes you wonder if Kim Rivers knew something like this was going to be coming. That's for sure. Based off of last month's news as well. But anyway, it's a big political game, obviously, right now. I'm assuming that there's a lot of lobbyists involved and a lot of things that we don't know and won't speculate. But needless to say, I think this would be a huge win, to say the least, for operators within the state of Florida, right?
Yeah, big.
Let's move now to our second headline. Earnings season. Just when you thought it was over, Ben, guess what? It's not. Canadian company Organigram reporting their 2023 financial results. It included some interesting numbers, to say the least, including double-digit gains on the revenue top line, Ben. So what were some of the notable numbers that grabbed your attention based on their latest earnings?
Yeah, as this was a Q4 fiscal year 2023 report, you sort of break it down into quarterly results and then the fiscal year. On the fiscal year side, as you said, double-digit gains, 161.6 million on the top line. That's 11% increase over the 145.8 million in fiscal 2022. Gross margin percentage up a couple percent year over year. Adjusted EBITDA went from 3.5 million in 2022 to 6 million this year. So obviously, adjusted EBITDA is not cash flow. It's far from it, but at least it shows incremental improvement in the operating metrics of the company. But despite all this, significant losses overall, and this is what kind of keeps me out of investing in most of the LPs, including Organigram. It came out, overall losses were 248 million for the year. 248 million, and that is a substantial, that's including, even though they had a substantial follow-on investment of 124.6 million from BAT. So as you can see, they're still kind of a far away from profitability or any sort of cash flow generation. But at least some of the metrics did improve. Some seasonality on the Q4s that weren't all that great, but that's to be expected because of seasonality up here in Canada.
It's a big number, right, Anthony?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to say a bunch of positive things about the name, but you can't really get away from that number. If we're talking about investing in the cannabis space, I mean, a company that's losing $250 million in a year, I'd have to say that your capital is best suited other places. That being said, I mean, there's the metrics are improving on their core business.
Yeah.
It's maybe the only product that I've actually tried in Canada, aside from the Gauge and the cookie stuff, when the last time I was in Toronto with you guys, that I've actually liked. Organigram grows good flower. Like, they have decent product that's in market. The Canadian consumer has validated that. That being said, I think they still have a lot of growing to do and a lot of right sizing and maturation of the business.
Yeah.
It's a really big number. I don't know how I could get past that if I was going to deem it worthy of investing in the company today. That being said, I think OGI is one of the Canadian LPs that everyone is looking at. I think it's one of the Canadian LPs that's still in the conversation, and it's something that's still going to stay on all of ours radar moving forward. So, I mean, if they have a bang up 2024, things improve, and obviously that loss gets under control, there could be things to like in the name. I'll definitely watch it moving forward.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is where we talk about, just to add quickly, about Kronos. When I look at these metrics, the company has a lot of revenue, $60 million in revenue for the year, but they're losing all this money. And that's where I look at Kronos, a much smaller operation,
Yeah.
but they're preserving a lot more of their cash balance sheet. So do you want to get started out in front of all this, lose a bunch of money, but still have, more operating units out there that are more mature? Or do you want to deploy your capital when things are really able to start, especially in the US? So it's like chicken the egg. We see the results of somebody who started early and is growing, and their financial, their balance sheet is taking a hit because of it.
What was that investment back in early November? It's 124 million from BAT.
He's 124, 129 million from BAT, and then there's escalators in there to where they can take up to. I don't quote me on this. I should know this for talking about it, but it's either 49 or 51%, which has giant ramifications either way of the business moving forward. There's escalators in there where BAT can essentially take this out moving forward if they wanted to.
Organigram plans to use $83.1 million of the investment to create Jupiter, a strategic investment pool designed to expand Organigram's geographic footprint and capitalize on emerging growth opportunities. I don't know, I understand what that means, but don't understand that means. I'd be curious to see. That's a big investment
your natural inclination would mean that they want to come south of the border.
Yeah.
To enhance their geographic footprint. Not to get too speculative, but we could be a ways off of that as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're talking about them. They're still here. They're above water and solvent, and they've got a hell of a strategic partner. So, I mean, I think while I would say it's probably not on my top 10 list today, it's definitely, I think, intriguing enough to watch moving into the future.
Yeah. 3012 writes, retail is probably the way to go in Canadian cannabis. No? What do you guys think?
I think you couldn't be more correct. I mean, I think High Tide's proven that. High Tide stock's performing well. High Tide's business is performing well. High Tide's actually making money. That might be the thesis around how to succeed in Canada. Just go for retail and understand your consumer and know how to operate a business, and you can actually squeeze dollars out of that.
SNDL as well, just for all you viewers out there, because I know you don't like it when we keep you out, but SNDL as well. Luca M writes, why? Go ahead.
They have an emphasis at retail.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
It's the strategic investments that are really hitting like Organigram and some of these other companies when they're investing abroad, right? That's what's kind of that's why they're losing all this money. High Tide is more focused on retail, and they're buttoned up on the balance sheet. So if you like, the metrics definitely look a lot better now in terms of profitability and cash flow. So if that's what you're focused on, and you're not looking at long-term, business building and where things could be going in 5 years down the road, then High Tide's probably your stock.
It was interesting last week. I don't want to get off topic. Just talking to Boris in Toronto, just how a lot of these black market retail dispensaries are going to flip to the legal side real fast, and not smart to obviously get into the retail sector or market if you've already got an established footprint for many companies in that city. But the wholesale market, I can't imagine how large that's going to be.
If I'm the state of New York, I would give every single illegal dispensary a license tomorrow.
100%.
And let them rip.
Let them roll.
If you can generate profit, and if you can maintain a business, you have the right to operate. If you can't, and you can't operate within this legal framework, you're going to go out of business, and it's going to be the cream's going to rise to the top. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd give them all licenses tomorrow and say, go to town. But if you're caught selling illegal product through these doors and you're caught with off-market stuff, like, you're going to jail. It's not even a conversation. Just
call me naive, but why would you sell a legal product if you have a fully legalized dispensary? How's that work?
You sell it out. You could sell a legal product out the back for more money, and I mean, you're not going to get taxed.
Yeah, true. Like anything.
Look at what Stizzy was just.
Yeah, I hear you.
Allegedly doing.
Wisdom writes, hello, fellas. Hello, Wisdom. Good to hear from you, sir. Or if that's, my apologies in advance if you're not a sir, but thank you for logging on, and we appreciate the feedback. Luca M writes, why was Tilray's volume so high today? I don't know if you guys got a chance to see that, but we can dive into that during our daily movers if you'd like.
Yeah, I had that on my list. 40 million shares traded.
Wow.
Your guess is as good as mine.
We'll touch on that with our first daily movers, Canopy Growth, with its first full trading day since the reverse split. But let's go into headline number 3. This is the TDR Traded Black podcast here on the Benzinga Television Network as we move to Washington and Capitol Hill, where a newly released survey data reveals that staff and lobbyists are so far vindicated in their pessimism about the prospects of marijuana reform in the 118th Congress. Staggering stats, to say the least, regarding the optimism, the differences between how they feel about all this, with a huge number basically saying, Anthony, that it's very highly unlikely that we see any kind of reform within the next 2 years. Can you maybe share what some of those stats were? And again, how old some of these people are in Congress?
Yeah, I mean, these were all staffers, so these weren't actual politicians that are in Congress. These are their constituents that work for them, and I mean, it was only 13% of them said that something would pass by the end. Oh, that was actually by the end of 2023.
13.
It was, yeah. It skewed higher on the GOP side with staffers saying that nothing's going to get done. Obviously, it skewed less with the Democratic, that nothing's going to get done. But not to trigger Ben, but I think in response to this article, Chuckles came out of his hole today and had to put out a statement on safe banking progress in 2024, that it's going to be front of mind on his agenda once the Congress is going to hit the ground running. I mean, it's funny because we had 2 tweets that we got tagged in a tweet, and at the same time, I'm like, I'm going to sound off on this on the stream. And Ben comes over the top and he's like, I'm not even giving this the time of day. Like, I'm sick of talking about Chuck, like, which I don't blame him at all. I had a feeling Chuck was going to come out today and say something in response to that article last night, it was a Punch Bowl article. I'm pretty sure the stats were from like a year ago or earlier in the year. It was really just suspect timing, to be completely honest.
Okay, this is all in the context of Schumer coming out this year, a few months ago, saying that that cannabis reform is on his legislative priority for 2023, and I'm pretty sure he said something similar in 2022. So I just tweeted back. I'm just like, at this point, being the lead financial writer at TDR, I'm not even going to talk about this until there's a floor vote, because we've seen so many Chuck Schumer promises. This is priority. We're going to get this through. This has been happening for essentially over 3 years. Actually, probably going back to 5 when he was campaigning. If the Democrats won the 2020 presidential election. So, I mean, this is just a complete travesty at this point. Like, I just want to see, I want to see it. I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Yeah.
And everybody's feeling the same way. Trust me, with the reaction that we're getting on our tweets. And I think everybody has that same frame of mind.
So when you speak on this, it's the real thing then, right, Ben? You're keeping your mouth shut until then.
Well,
I'm just not going to report on it. I mean, I just think it's pointless because it's a politician's words.
That is literally the general sentiment.
Yeah. Pete V, Schumer can blow it out his ass. Excuse my language.
It's like what I told the guy. It's like what I told the guy on the stream when it was just me and Ben about his cannabis. He can just stick it up his ass.
Let's just happen. Like, I mean, there's like, I want to talk about substantive things. I don't want to talk about a politician's words. I mean, you can't trust any politician's words, let alone in the cannabis space.
So I actually want to bring this. I actually want to bring this up because this is interesting. I'm assuming he's asking about Georgia, which the DEA has essentially said pharmacies are not allowed to sell cannabis.
Right.
Which, from my understanding, pharmacies are federally regulated entities. They're not state regulated entities. So cannabis is federally illegal. It's legal on the state level. What the DEA is doing, I personally don't think it's an overreach. I think it was brazen for Georgia to even assume that the DEA was going to leave them alone and let them sell cannabis through federally licensed dispensaries. So this doesn't come as a surprise, really. Once I saw it, it's not the DEA overstepping. I don't think the Cole memo protects the pharmacies in this regard, and I really actually don't think it's mixed messaging. It's the DEA enforcing federal mandates on federal entities at the federal level. So this doesn't scare me either. I don't think this has any implications on Schedule 3, or it wouldn't be happening if we were going to be getting rescheduling, because I think rescheduling is coming whether we like it or not.
It's coming.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just the DEA doing the DEA's job.
Yeah.
It's literally their job to do this. So it's really not surprising. It sucks for Georgia, as they're going to lose some of their outlets to dispense medicine to patients within the framework that they rolled out. But I mean, I think it's just a bump in the road, and it's really not a surprise.
Okay. All right. I do like that comment of Pete V. You want to bring that up again, Mitch? And TDR's correspondent, who was on the floor, said, quote, Chuck Schumer can blow it out his ass. Excuse my language. Details at 6.
We should get that guy on the show for Friday when we have that user to come on the show. I don't know if that's been set up yet, but I mean, that would be.
You know what? At the end of this podcast, we need to announce who we're bringing on. Give us your comments below. I know we've been getting a lot of messages in the DMs, but let's pick somebody.
Oh, we got him.
Do we?
We got him.
You're not going to say it yet?
I'll say it at the end of the show. You just said
you say it. You say it. You say it.
I don't want to spoil it.
Okay.
But we got the right guy for the job.
All right. Okay, let's go on to our final headline into the wire. Mitch, you still there, buddy? We're getting off script here today, aren't we, buddy?
Always. We're keep it going, baby.
We're good unless Mitch hits us with the hook and just flashes the disclosure to get us the hell off the screen.
Yeah.
So as long as we don't have that, we're good.
Okay, listen, last one, and this is actually encouraging. Forget all these staffers and like Congress people, but CIBC analyst John Zamparo believes that the DEA will indeed reschedule cannabis at some point in 2024, saying it's likely to happen, which is obviously encouraging. Ben, when I read this, you may maybe provide sharing some feedback as to whether or not there was any light or shed some light on when this could potentially happen in 2024, when he might think it might happen.
Yeah, the note I saw didn't specify a timeline of when it could happen. It was sort of implied, actually in the note, it was implied that Zamparo believed it could unfold closer to the 2024 U.S. presidential election. And that's something that we've seen before, how, good reform actions like this, politicians want to take credit closer to the election to perhaps bring out the youth vote, which makes total sense. There was actually 2 analysts on here from CIBC. The other one was Nishant, Rathi, and both analysts are simultaneously skeptical that any reform on US will come to the legislature next year. So if we're reading what they're saying rescheduling is going to happen, but yet something like SAFER that Chuck Schumer promises is going to be on the priority for 2024 probably won't happen. So I'm of the mind, if we get one of the two, rescheduling is definitely the most important. I'm fine with that, because I don't trust what Schumer is going to do anymore. And I don't even think we necessarily need that. We just need rescheduling that leads to the uplist and all the things that we've talked about. So, and just for people out there, I actually looked up John Zamparo. I went to Tip Ranks to see his ranking as an analyst. His success rate on his calls and his recommendations is 47%, and he ranks 1,887 out of 8,655 Wall Street analysts, according to the ranking. So he's in the top quartile, just makes it in the top quartile. So not a bad analyst, but they think rescheduling is coming. So hopefully he's right.
I like those stat numbers. That's interesting to say the least. What you're putting your hands up, Anthony?
I mean, I think Ben said it very eloquently, but if I was going to flash a Captain Obvious meme onto the screen, 20, okay, we're going to get rescheduling.
My only thing though is I don't think
you don't need to pay me to be an analyst to say that we're rescheduling might happen in 2024.
Yeah, but I do think when I brought it up as to like when we think that might happen, I don't think it's going to take until like leading up to the election, like August, September. I think it happens way before that. But
with all due respect, if rescheduling doesn't happen in 2024, the entire industry is in trouble.
Yeah, I hear you.
In a lot of trouble.
I'm curious to see, and I think many investors would want to know, is it happening in Q4 leading up to the election, or we think it's going to happen towards the end of Q1 going into Q2? Interesting that we had with Boris on last week. He's just throwing something out there, and I know a lot of people might say, well, when's Boris been right? But this is a man that's well connected. But could we see some sort of promo announcement? It's around 420. Who knows? But
yeah, I think if it's going to happen, it's not going to happen like right up to the lead up. You don't want to like put these things into motion in September or something like that. No. Things are way too busy on the political calendar. Then you'd want to do it somewhere around probably spring, or early to late spring, somewhere around there. So it has time to time to maneuver and get this into place for when the election happens. It's already in motion, right? So I would think sometime around March to May would be my timeline.
Yep.
Also, I agree. For this, we didn't say Schedule 2 is not possible. Anything's possible. Not getting rescheduling is possible. We don't have a magic crystal ball, but we've talked to a lot of people, myself, Ben, Shad, people in the DEA, lobbyists in Washington. If cannabis gets rescheduled, I would say that there's a 98% chance it's going to Schedule 3.
Yeah.
Schedule 2 has not even been part of the conversation. No, and when we're speaking, we're not speaking in platitudes here. I mean, we're speaking to highly qualified people that are boots on the ground in the space across several arenas. And Schedule 2 would shock every single last one of them.
Yeah.
If that was the case. Which, I mean, to be honest, Schedule 1 is probably better than Schedule 2 at this point. With the implications that Schedule 2 could potentially bring.
Can you outline that real quick so people understand?
Yeah, because per Schedule 2, that means that the drug needs to be built, needs to be manufactured in a GMP facility, and it needs to be distributed through a pharmacy.
Which that would happen.
That would blow up the entire cannabis business model as we know it today.
That is not going to happen.
So yes, they'd probably create more trouble for themselves rescheduling it to Schedule 2 than doing it to 3, getting the win or booking the win and being on their way. Because Schedule 2, we wouldn't see as a win. The industry wouldn't see as a win. The voters wouldn't see as a win. It's just going to convolute things even more.
The FDA doesn't have the apparatus to even tackle this thing, let alone create sensible rules on CBD. They can't. They don't have the enforcement arm to be able to do that. I mean, I don't see that happening at all. There's no way. And the system actually kind of works right now in the individual states and the way they dispense medical cannabis and with the adult use industry. I see virtually zero chance that it would go to Schedule 2. Although it is possible. You never know. I mean, as politicians will deal with regulators.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
Oh, and there's also the John Boyes lawsuit that's going on as well. So, I mean, that's another card that we're playing right now. Like I've said before, I mean, the conversation is happening everywhere.
You're talking about 500,000 jobs in the U.S. alone and all the infrastructure that they've built as well. That's not happening.
Yeah.
So anyways, we're not going to sit here and say that we're hearing from the horse's mouth, but a lot of people that are connected. And, we have learned a lot of times, even people that we think are very valuable names in this space that are connected through time, we've come to realize that they're not even as accurate. But as we meet and travel and have conversations with various lobbyists, a lot of things that we learn, but the consistent thing we hear, whether it's from someone in New York or someone in the Southwest, the feedback that we continue to hear is end of Q1, early Q2. So there you go. That's why I keep thinking it'll happen around that time frame. But to your point, Ben, between March and May makes sense based on what you think. But anyways, that pretty much wraps up our first segment, Into the Wire, outlining and headlining all the biggest headlines in cannabis, psychedelics. Have we even talked about that in the last week or two? Got to get back on that train.
I think the last thing we talked about was the MindMed trial last Thursday.
Oh, we did.
Then we talked about the MAPS NDA new filing. I could probably keep going back.
Yeah, I know. But long story short, needs to be some more news and just stuff to talk about in this space right now. But it seems pretty quiet as we are towards the end of the year. But anyway, you're going to say something, Ben?
Yeah, I was going to say it's biotech. So, I mean, this is the way it's always going to be. You're never going to have the consistent news flow week in, week out like you do in cannabis, even in late December or mid-December. However, I do think, just as a quick aside, I think last week was probably the most important news flow week of the year for the psychedelic space with the NDA filing, first ever for a psychedelic compound or protocol, and then the great results from MindMed. So I expect 2024 potentially to be a turning year for the industry, but we'll talk more about that later.
Biotech and small towns got a lot in common. You could leave and come back a couple years later, nothing really changes, right?
Yeah,
it's pretty bad.
No. Yeah, it's glacial. I mean, the speed of this industry is glacial. However, bit by bit, we're getting there. This is now 2024 will be like the fourth year of the industry. And it almost seems like it hasn't even been that long. I mean, the stocks exploded in 2020, I believe.
Yeah.
And then now we're in 2024 and the research went from early clinical stage and phase 1. Now we're, 5 are going into phase 3. So, I mean, we're progressing. I know it seems slow.
I thought, speaking of psychedelics, actually, last night I was forced to watch The Housewives with my wife. And one of them actually went through, but no, what I thought was weird is one of them actually went through a ketamine treatment on the show. They showed her being injected. They showed her going through a bunch of different emotions.
Which one was it?
It was Real Housewives of Miami. She was crying. She was talking about her brother and her father.
Wow.
But what I thought was weird was some of the segment, there wasn't a therapist present in the room. It was her friend that was sitting there with her in the room.
So how do these ketamine clinics work?
From my understanding, as far as SOPs go and the process goes, if you're in one of these treatments, just in case something happens, there needs to be a therapist present at all times in that room.
Unless they're doing home ketamine.
No. This is in a clinic. This is in a clinic.
Huh.
Oh, in a clinic.
This was in a clinic. And you could see with a wide angle shot that the therapist was not present in the room for some of the therapy, which I thought was very odd, to say the least. I said it in real time to my wife. I'm like, I don't know about this because there's no therapist there. And from my understanding, there needs to be one present during the therapy at all times.
Yeah. Nicholas Pinto writes, rescheduling is happening 420. I'm with you, buddy. I hope you're right. I hope I'm right too. Cleve Noes writes, progress isn't going to come from the House or Senate. It's going to either come from the DEA or from the David Boyce lawsuit, which you might have some valid facts there.
I tend to agree
with that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think
there's gotta wait some time for that. Yeah.
I don't tend to disagree with that staffing poll that says that there's going to be nothing going through the House or the Senate in 2024 as far as banking or marijuana reform. I just don't think it needed to be said.
Wow.
It was just suspect as far as the way that it was. That didn't need to be put out. Anyone with half a brain is kind of thinking that it's Schedule 3.
Dave Green, are we talking about a TV show now? Real Housewives, credibility?
Okay, it was relative to psychedelics, and I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. Dave, on that note, we'll end this conversation just right now. One last thing. Wisdom writes, my sister uses ketamine treatment. Where is it? Treatment has been depressed free for a year plus. That's great. Glad it works, obviously, for you and your sister. Good times, to say the least, knowing that she's not depressed anymore. It's great to hear. Okay, that wraps up Into the Wire. Let's move into segment number 2, which is our daily movers here on the Traded Black podcast and the Benzinga Television Network. Anthony, will begin first with Canopy Growth. First day trading at the new price after the 10-to-1 stock split. What did we see?
Saw muted price action. I mean, it's on the tape. It looks kind of cool. It's up 823% today.
Yeah.
After the 10-for-1 split. I think it opened at around a $402 million market cap.
Yeah.
This morning on the open, it traded up as high as, I think, 525, 530 a share, hung around there for a while, closed the day down at 480 a share. This is where I'm interested to see the price action over the next, let's say, 7 to 10 trading days and see how the stock absorbs this split. And then we'll probably start to position in somewhere from there.
What was the volume like today?
It's funny. So the volume was 4.4 million shares traded.
Okay.
So the stock split 10-for-1, the volume pretty much got cut 90%. So we're seeing 10% of the 10% of the usual volume. It's just nice symmetry in numbers. But I'm going to watch it closely from here, specifically through the end of the week, see how it closes out.
This definitely was an institution play before, because it was averaging, would you say, 30, 40, 100 million shares, like in some days this fall. So with this reverse stock split, like, is it still an institutional on the radar, like an institutional buy based on this reverse split?
I don't think the split has any bearing around institutional or retail now.
So you think any news pertaining to the industry, you still see, because it trades in a proxy, you see that same trend?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I do.
Okay.
Just to be clear, it's not an institutional buy; it's a trading buy.
Yeah. Trading buy, I
it's
should
a
say.
Retail trading buy on reform.
Yeah.
Institutions probably aren't, although they could. I mean, they're listed on the Tier 1 exchange, but it's mostly a retail trading proxy right now.
Yeah.
Even at the volume, I guess, yeah, because if you got 97% retail, even at volume, so you're thinking that at 100 million in volume on a daily basis, a lot of that
it wasn't trading 100 million on a daily basis. It was trading between 30 and 40 million on a daily basis. Dollar weighted, that's 15 to 20 million dollars worth of stock on a daily basis.
I was thinking they had over 100 million at some days back in September.
Well, yeah, but not average.
Some days they do, but not on a daily basis. Not like the average daily volume.
Okay.
Yeah.
Daily, I should say, daily movers and stock number 2. Sorry, I've got a little brain fog for all you viewers out there. I'm actually on second day of COVID, not dying, but I'm still got a little brain fog going on. But our next daily mover, commodities and Camino Resources. Ben, what are you seeing?
Camino Minerals. Before I go into this, I just want to disclose I do have a position. I've had a position for close to a year now. I've been in and took some profits and got back in. So I'm still in right now, and it's highly volatile. So if you're not into junior mining companies, then do not listen to this. Please research everything. Do not take anything I say. Take everything I say with a grain of salt. But I do like this play because I am a copper bull at heart. I think the copper as a commodity, I think it's going to go a lot higher over time. There are shortages that appeared this year, and I think there's a long-term structural shortage in the market, especially when you consider, the EV mandates, the batteries that go into it that use hundreds of pounds of copper, even things like you saw in Florida. Anthony could maybe touch up on it, but they're building a highway that recharges your car for electric vehicles. So things like this take a massive amount of copper because it's the best conductor out there relative to its price. So
what would the cost be involved in something like that? Designing highways that can actually charge or re-energize your car?
A lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds great, but also remember you have a high voltage line basically under your car, radiating you. But I mean, that's another topic for another day. But I like, Camino Minerals just because I like their projects. They're early stage. They have 23,000 meters drilled. Right now, it's mostly a copper oxide mine, which is low grade, high tonnage. So it's basically, there's copper flakes all over, if you want to call it, and they can scoop up this in these massive trucks, put it in and do something called a leach mining technique, where they could separate that copper by sulfur chloride and these kind of minerals. So that's what they have now. But they also found like a deep vein potential strike, which a lot of other mines are based on this, the Andes trend where they're located in southern Peru. There's big mines there, and perhaps there could be a find there. So they're going to start drilling in December. They have another property they're drilling in January. Again, highly volatile. This could be a nothing, or this could be eventually, a 10 bagger if you want to call it. But it really depends on what they find.
Okay. Just a quick reminder, all views in the Traded Black podcast, the guests on this podcast are purely opinion. You should not treat any opinions by our guests as investment advice. The views on this podcast are solely intentional to be informational and are not investment advice. Okay, our next daily mover here at the TDR Traded Black podcast here on the Benzinga Television Network is Safe Harbor, which trades on the NASDAQ, Anthony, under the ticker symbol, is it SHFS, if I'm correct?
Is it SHFS? That's correct. I mean, Safe Harbor, I don't want to call it a liquid, but I mean, it doesn't move a lot as far as trading volume goes. I mean, traded 1.2 million shares, up 21% today on no news. I'm going to watch this throughout the rest of the week. I mean, we just had Sunday on the week before. For an interview. I mean, she's an OG in the space. I mean, she's heavily ingrained in the financial and banking reform.
Yeah.
In the space. And I mean, Safe Harbor is one of the only financial institutions that I would say are playing in the space from a lending and and just an overall financial perspective. So I mean, it's moving. It caught my attention on my screen today, and I'll continue to be watching it going.
Yeah, for sure. Happy Glass, thanks for answering that question. I was going to bring it up to Luca M. Why can Canopy be listed on NASDAQ but not Cureleaf? Happy Glass wrote, Luca M. Canopy is a Canadian company that has no plant-touching operations in the U.S. Cannabis is legal in Canada, so they can list on U.S. big boards. Cureleaf is active in the U.S., and they are forbidden at the moment. And I think that's the key at the moment. Lone Wolf actually writes, and here's a company we used to talk about a lot 5, 6, 7 years ago, Chiron. Anyone have any info on Chiron? Have you guys even paid attention? Have you even heard of this company? Like, what's things not trading?
So
right
I used to have a pretty close relationship with the people at Chiron.
Yep.
2-3 years ago,
Alvaro?
probably 3 years ago. Alvaro, great guy. I mean, a lot of Chiron's success and a lot of Chiron's eggs were in the basket of Mexico actually going adult use and decriminalizing and legalizing cannabis, and that hasn't happened.
Yeah.
I wouldn't expect to hear big things or see any momentum with Chiron unless there's some sort of huge disruptive announcement coming out of Mexico. And I mean, that's pretty much my take on it right now.
Is it still trading? I don't think it is.
I would be
Goner.
lying to you.
It should be.
I'd be lying to you if I said that I was watching the stock. It's not even on my screen.
Yeah, it fell off the radar too. I think they're heavy into low-cost cannabis production that they could export. So I'm not sure that that's gotten off the ground yet as well. But that was another important part of their business model. So yeah, it's sort of fallen off the radar. I'm with Anthony.
What that stock hit? Was it $3-4 at one time? 5?
Around that,
yeah. $4 at least.
Heavy volume.
And then just on a side note, I mean, anybody that's really paying attention to crypto, things are starting to move and move fast. And I mean, in the stock space, I own one of these. I don't own the other two. So, I mean, I'd be watching Coinbase, which I do own. I'd be watching Marathon, and I'd be watching Riot blockchain, the Bitcoin mining companies, and the digital asset companies. I mean, they're going to move and they're going to move quickly. BlackRock yesterday was back at the SEC, basically shoring up their application for this spot Bitcoin ETF. The spot Bitcoin ETF is going to happen, and if it happens, it's going to take the sector with it quickly. Yes. So, I mean, these are ways to prepare and get positioned ahead of that, because a lot of people and a lot of us have been involved in these industries, whether it be cannabis, psychedelics, or crypto. And a lot of these events are sell the news events. I'd be willing to bet my bottom dollar this is going to be a buy the news event. This is not going to be a sell the news event in the crypto space. This will aggressively move if and when you see the spot Bitcoin ETFs finally get approved and drop.
In our latest podcast with Mark Yusko, we actually recorded with him yesterday. We're going to be pushing that out next Tuesday, December the 26th. But to your point, he is the CEO of Morgan Creek Digital, very well connected person. He's done very well in this space. He thinks that we'll probably get an announcement and approval on January the 8th. I'm not saying it's that exact date, but
I was shocked.
You asked that question, is this a sell news event? And he was like, he shut you down in half a second.
I was shocked that Mark said January 8th.
Why is that?
Because guys like Mark, they don't really make those predictions, or they don't like to speak unless they are very certain. Mark is he's one of the smartest guys I've spoken to in a very long time.
Yeah.
I was very surprised when he said January 8th. That was very specific. That being said, January 10th is the cutoff for the approval. So, I mean, that's a highly educated guess. I would expect to see it around that time frame as well.
I love
it was great podcast with him once again.
Love the brackets, how he brought up about how every 14 years you start to see change. He basically said the crypto space, a lot of the old guard was like from 2010 to 2015. They were like thinking a bunch of computer nerds, go trade, have fun, whatsoever. And when they started to see the rise of Bitcoin from like 2016 to 2022, they started to trash, obviously, crypto and the whole Bitcoin industry. But here we are from 2023 to 2027 now. This is where there starts to see change, and you're starting to see a lot of the old guard change. Some people are having a tough time because, let's face it, they're going to start losing more and more control. But I think the thing that grabbed my attention is that 2024, Mark indicated, is going to be a big year for this overall industry, which is, I can't see how it's not.
I mean, it is. And I think that what's going to be easy about this run is thematically, crypto is very thematic. So, I mean, we had DeFi that took off. There were NFTs that took off. Altcoins that took off. Those are very hard to access. Like, you need to be sophisticated and know exactly how to navigate the ecosystem to go buy NFTs, to play in DeFi. This time around, the thematic 800-pound gorilla, I could be wrong, but I think it's going to be Bitcoin.
Yeah.
It's going to be Bitcoin and Bitcoin miners, and that is easy to play because they're already NASDAQ listed stocks. There's already an ETF around Bitcoin and Ethereum, GBTC and ETHE by Grayscale, that are not spot ETFs, but they're in the queue to change those over to spot ETFs in line with BlackRock, Fidelity, and Vanguard. And thematically, to chase this run, it's going to be pretty easy. You're not going to have to load up a MetaMask, get a hard wallet. God forbid you click on like links. You can do this traditionally in the sense of TradFi. So
which I think is a great.
Yeah.
That's what I find exciting too. It's simplified for new customers to come in, or should say investors to come in and really understand the process. And if you can come in a year where there's growth, think of how much more of a conversation it's going to generate at the supper table for people to get more and more interested in the space, and gradually you start to see a change. That wraps up segment number 2, Daily Movers, here on the TDR Traded Black podcast here on the Benzinga Television Network. Quick recap. Could we see tax deductions in the state of Florida? One can only hope. CIBC analyst John Zamparo believes that rescheduling will indeed happen at some point in 2023. Daily movers on the day. Canopy growth. We looked at that. What was the big takeaway again, guys, based on their day of their 10-to-1 reverse split? First day on it.
It was solid. I mean, it was solid. Like, it ended the day down slightly. But I mean, like I said, I'm going to watch it probably going from now until the new year, and then start to make a decision on how to move on it. Probably the first 2 weeks of January. All
right. And last takeaway, Camino Resources. Benny Boy playing a copper play right now. Probably not a bad idea.
Yeah, again, very extreme amount of risk, though. You really have to know what you're doing. That's why I actually don't play a lot of junior plays on the Canadian exchanges for that reason. The drawdowns are very harrowing, but take a look at it. You know, it's a risk-reward play. I'm committed for the long term, and we'll see what happens. But really do your due diligence if you're interested in this name.
Yeah. Duke of Earl writes, Chiron is in a lot of trouble. Well,
that's one way to put it.
Yeah. All right, gents, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll catch back up with you. By the way, we're going to have, we got to announce the winner.
Oh, yeah. Who's coming on the show?
Who's coming on?
Mr. Guapatron 4000.
Guap.
I don't even think he's on here today.
All right.
But yes, he's going to be the guest correspondent that comes on.
All right. So Guap, let's hear what you got to say on Friday. Guap, what I need you to do in the comments below is send us your email address, and then I'll send you over the link. And news on a tie. Sorry, before I let you go. Did you guys see that? Was there some news on a tie life sciences?
News on a tie?
Was it after the bell? I didn't see any news today.
I don't see any news on I don't see any news indications on my screen.
We're going to have Jason Wild from Terracin, chairman of Terracin, on our podcast as well at 4:10 on Friday. Little sign off for the holiday season, just to give you guys I don't see
anything for a tie at all.
Next week, we're taking the week off. We're going to take a little bit of a hiatus between Christmas. We need a break. So we'll be back on Wednesday, January the 3rd. So our final podcast of 2023 will take place this Friday, December the 22nd. And then we will be back on Wednesday, January the 3rd. If there's anything big that comes down next week, which I highly doubt will, we'll make sure to jump on and give you guys just some quick alerts. So make sure to tap on that bell for all notifications to get the latest news. And indeed, if we come on last minute, but I wanted to give you guys a heads up as we welcome JW back to the podcast, who actually was supposed to join us today, but he's actually on a boat. And I don't blame him. All right. Okay. Check you later. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. And if you want to learn more about the emerging industries that we cover, then leave a comment below and let us know who you want us to interview, the questions you want asked, and the information that you want to learn. We want to hear from you. As usual, click on that bell for all notifications to get the latest information. Share this video with your network, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel because we